We're coming up to the mic, we're just standing.
You can do right there, but just state your name and address for the lead.
Sure. Name's Jacob Calabrese. Address is going to be 106 Lobbs Run Road. Okay. So I came here tonight actually to bring up one major concern that we have. Through this presentation, I actually found several more, so I'm going to kind of run through three main ones here. The first is going to be the contamination of water. So we live about 1,000 feet from where this well pad will be going in. We're on spring water. That is the primary and only water supply at our house. We have a 16-acre recharge, which I have from the DEP, and the well pad is going to be in that area. So my main concern, obviously, is contamination of our water supply. My pregnant wife, my soon-to-be born child, this is a major concern, right? So I would like to know what kind of safeguards, and as we had just heard, right, there's not an active cadence for testing. It is on complaint basis. And so if something is to get into the water supply, it's an after the fact, right? It's a posthumous sort of recovery. It does not make me feel very safe knowing that there is the potential of contamination, and only upon my complaint will that then be investigated. The second concern that I've now had is that I did not realize water would be being pulled out of this site. Last summer, obviously, we had a bit of a drought, right? Our water supply was quite low as it was. So I'm a little bit concerned about pulling more water out of our recharge area. Again, this is the only serviceable water that we have for our property. So that is a concern to me. The final concern that I have now also called out, we are the property west of the pad, where all the sound is being directed.
Oh boy.
We are, again, about 1,000 feet. That is half the distance that we are to the McIntosh compressor station. Now, I don't know if that has the same sound approved levels. What I can say is that we can noticeably hear the McIntosh compressor station. It is loud. It is loud in our house. This is half the distance. And again, right, that opening is now aimed at my house, which I've just learned. So all of these concerns, right, I kind of hope we can touch on. Thank you guys for coming today. I appreciate the presentation, of course. Thank you.
Todd Kleiner, EQT. I'm going to address your comments. If you have a specific concern, if you've got a spring, it's within 1,000 feet. That's something that we definitely, our water folks, want to know about. And if you've gotten your notice for the water supply, write that in on your notice when it comes back, so that whenever our geologists take a look at it, they know that there's this additional concern.
Yes, GINS have actually already been out and done GPS coordinates for all of our spring property.
Okay.
But again, right, that does not address my main point of contamination.
Okay. So is your elevation above or below the well pad?
Below.
Okay, below to the west. I thought that looked like that was above, but no.
I actually
let's
have
talk about
a map from the DEP. Don Hegberg, I believe is his name.
Okay.
Came out last summer, and I have the 16-acre recharge mapped out, again, going up into the pad.
Yeah, Don's the guy that handles all of the complaints for the DEP whenever they do come in.
How do you get in touch with her? That's my complaint too.
The contact number for the DEP, I know it off the top of my head, it's Southwest Street is 412-442-4000. But I mean, it's on every piece of paper that we send out.
I think about 2 years ago, tested mine. Rich talk. Rich talk. It's my concern too. My spring's the only water source I have, and I'm very close to 500 foot from the pad. Now they come out 2 years ago, tested me, and I heard nothing since. So his concern and my concern are pretty similar.
And on the delay in the water testing, there is an answer for that. And basically, we were going to develop this pad, then we changed management, and then the development plans changed. So now
you're starting on it when they coming out testing it.
I'll look into that. So I mean, the date I don't know because I don't coordinate that, but
so we're responsible for monitoring it. And like he said, if something comes up, what are we at?
What do you mean? What are you?
If it's contaminated, well, how do we resolve that? We have
you contact us or contact DEP.
And how soon are they going to be there?
I think there's
a legal requirement that we need to replace your water supply. I think within 48 hours.
And on your second point, you're worried about water being taken from your spring. That's not how this works. What we have with the Department of Environmental Protection is a water management plan. So any water source we use has to be approved as part of this plan. So in this case, when I say a municipal water vault, what that is, the main water line running through the area, we'll put in, think of it as an underground hydrant, and we'll take water there. We do have sources like, say, the Monongahela River. We can pull out of the Monongahela River, but the volumes, what we pull with it has to be an approved volume. We can't just take a limited amount where, okay, we're pulling from the lawn, we're going to take 7 billion gallons. It doesn't work like
But
that.
are you developing water on the site?
No.
There's no water development on the site.
When you say water development, you mean like?
Are you drilling a well?
No. And if we were, we would have to get approval from DEP to do that. And in my year, I've been doing water management plans for 10 years. I can think of 2 wells that were in Jefferson County that we did, and they were such low volume producers, it didn't work out for
It's a
us.
low volume area, hence my.
Right. So yeah.
This is clear, John. I mean, EQT is not going to be pulling any surface or groundwater from a pad or anywhere near the pad, correct?
Correct. The nearest water source is the municipal mall that I touched on earlier.
We have the property right across from Richie's, which is.
Your name, please?
Leah Fink. And we have horses that use the creek that goes through. We have a well. Keystone contacted us twice. We filled out the surveys. We turned it back in. They said they were going to come out, gave us a date, never showed. Rescheduled, never showed.
Was that Keystone that didn't show?
Yes,
Okay.
very concerned about the water supply. Now, the well, the Mama Bear well out by Mingo, apparently all their water was contaminated. Now they will have containers.
That's new to me. I don't know, because that would be a legacy rice site, so I don't know. I mean, I can't speak to that.
Is there somebody that can to help us all feel more comfortable about what's going to be done with water monitoring and how that's going to be addressed? Because we have animals we want to protect, we have people we want to protect.
We have no access to public water.
Our
You're-
council should be protecting our citizens.
Your rights are spelled out very clearly in the oil and gas regulations, that it's our responsibility to prove that we didn't impact anything.
Well,
If
if you
we
don't
do,
show
we're
up-
responsible for, if we don't show up and sample it, then if you made a complaint after we moved, put the bit in the ground and hadn't even touched the water, it would be shown to be our fault, basically, is how the
Well,
regs
how
are
can they
written.
do that? Because they do not know where the aquifers are. They don't know where the water's coming from, so how can they say you didn't contaminate it? Or you did contaminate it?
That's just the way the regulations are written.
I
It's
hope you all are listening.
I'm recording.
Yeah.
If you have a complaint and we haven't taken a confirmatory sample that shows what the water quality was previously,
Yeah.
then it's our responsibility to replace your water supply.
With round containers that are refilled.
Either
I got a question.
it's a permanent supply, so it would have to be a redeveloped spring, a redeveloped well, or connecting you to public water supply.
Well, if you was to connect this to public water and the water's free right now, who pays for the public water for the rest of the time?
Water's never free. You have to you have to pump it. There's electricity involved. You don't ever have to clean your water
I got
supply.
gravity to the house. I do not need a pump.
That is a very
tell me
specific
it's not free.
situation.
You ain't the only one, there's a lot of them.
So, does anybody else have any other individuals that want to speak, if they can identify themselves?
Yeah, I'm George Pepsi, next to the well pad site.
There you go.
He's saying I'm 250 yards or feet from where from the pad. The top of my property, well, basically my property meets Sarah's 2 acres, and then the rest of the property is on the other side. Now, I measured it from the corner of my property on top to the side is 185 feet. Before.
I'd say 8 yards.
185 feet. It's 70 yards, almost 65 yards from the top of my property through his field to where your top of your pad's gonna be.
165 feet.
Yes, from my property. The house is down below. My property line comes up to the corner of Sarah's, goes over this way to Sarah's. On an angle going up to where your well pad's gonna be, it's roughly 200 feet.
Okay.
And you're saying you have the right to drill, because I got a lease with, across the road somehow, I'm not understanding what you're saying. We're getting our royalties right now from across the river.
Right.
Okay, now this well pad goes in, we don't get nothing off of that, because we're already leasing, getting our,
I don't have a map of what it looks like. I've looked at the laterals from.
I'm the closest house to this. Plus, I have the wind blowing off that hill 90% of the time. I lived here on that farm before Sarah owned it. My grandparents owned it. I know what the wind does up there. It blows constantly. I got emphysema. My wife had surgery. My daughter's got asthma. And this wind blows constantly, straight down to my house. Constantly. And when you're grading up there, you're going to have dust flying everywhere. And like I said, the way your structure was when we signed the lease, there was nothing about a well pad being in there. They was just leasing your ground. Now all of a sudden they come out with a well pad and have a grid put in. It has nothing to do with that well pad. So I'm going to be the closest to this house, to this property, and not make a penny off of it and put up with all the aggravation.
Yeah, you have a active, you're held by production with, from another lease, so.
Right.
So, you know, depending on how the wells are unitized, how the laterals run, I can't say that you're not gonna make anything off this well pad. It's gonna depend on the unitization of the well pad and how the laterals run. So that's not, you can't say with certainty that you're not gonna make anything off of this well pad.
Right, but you're still saying I'm within the distance of this well pad is fine.
Right. The way the ordinance is written, yes.
200 feet.
750 feet from the tall poles, because you have an active lease, so.
Well, I'm not 750 feet.
I think what your lease says is that wells can be developed within 200 feet of your property. And what the ordinance says is that we need a waiver for anything that's within 750 feet, unless there is a lease or other
You're talking about the
document.
wellhead you drill or the pad?
The wellhead.
Oh, so you're moving the wellhead, which makes it further away. Now, what about, like I'm saying, about all this dust blowing? I mean, like I said, I got Family Matters, and I'm the closest one there, and that wind blows off that hill straight down to my house.
I can't speak to the direction of the wind. I have to believe you, but I don't know how to answer that for you.
Well, you're not protecting the community then. If, you know, if you're gonna let a wellhead go in there, and I'm telling them how the wind blows and everything, well, I can't tell a wind.
What do you do for dust control on your access road?
Right, they did dust.
Dust
you know,
control on the access road.
Does you have this gentleman's name? Did you get it?
Rich Toth. Yeah, I'm up there.
There's a lot of people talking, I don't know all you.
Yeah, if we could all, for the benefit mostly of the court reporter, if we could not
That's fine.
all talk at the same time and just,
That's fine.
and actually, if you do ask a question, state your name first, so she'll
Okay,
have
very
that,
good.
okay?
Dust control on the access roads is, we spray, they call it tree sap, but it's an emulsification that they use for the DEP Dirt Gravel Roads program as well, that binds up the fine dust
That's
from
during construction?
You asked about the access road, so
Yeah, during construction, the
yeah,
access road.
during construction on the access road, yes, they'll use that.
Next.
Leah Fink, again. For all those folks that weren't represented when they signed a lease, prime example is why you should be represented when you sign a lease. Now, it's my understanding that EQT was recently has a class action filed against them in Allegheny County for not paying royalties to landowners that should have been paid royalties or underpaid them. And I think the board should put an addendum or some type of clause in there to make sure that they have leases with everybody all around here. They're clearly worried about their bottom line, not ours.
Most definitely.
Just a couple items. Just to touch on the concerns about dust and those items and which way the wind blows. The township ordinance requires them to comply with all standards. So any kind of activity. So if their activity, such as the sound, they've submitted proof stating that they will be able to with the sound level. If it turns out that they are not in compliance, the township can take action against them. I also just want to point out, and they've they've acknowledged that they will do this. Once the temporary construction activities, of the site, including the drilling, is completed, within 90 days, they have to come back and do another sound test to show what that well site is after all the dust settles, that they're still within the township requirements then. And so they will have to prove that. Same thing with dust. If you have dust, if you have issues, you need to notify the township, just like any other operation in the township, activity in the township. If their activities are causing dust, noise, whatever it might be, sound, light, all of that, they still have to comply. So, we could talk in hypotheticals, you would know better than most people, but if that is an issue, the dust becomes an issue, you need to contact the township, because as part of any type of approval that they're asking for, they are going to be required to stay in compliance, not just in the beginning, but throughout. So those standards will apply throughout, just like it applies to you, it applies to anyone else in the township. If that happens, you do need to contact the township, because they will have to remain or remedy that situation. So, just so you are aware of those items. And same thing with the water, those are all state regulated. The township's preempted from that. Those permits and those things, you might not agree with them, not saying the township does. There's been case law that's come down. Township's preempted from regulating things that state has permits for. However, as part of this conditional use application, and they're requested, if they were to be granted approval, they have to stay in compliance. So if there are water issues and they're not in compliance, you need to notify the township. We're not the inspection agency, that's the DEP, those are the regulations. But if they're not in compliance with those, you need to let the township know, because that would be a part of any type of approval that they're seeking. They're stating that they will stay in compliance, not with township regulations, but also all state-related regulations. So there is a bit of policing, I understand that might not seem fair. That's the way the state has set it up. Their testimony is that they will comply with all state regulations, but if you don't keep them honest, I can't speak to that, but the township cannot go out and test that. So if you're looking for the township to do that, the township's preempted from that, but the township still does have the right to ensure that they are compliant with all state regulations or federal regulations that are outside of the township's jurisdiction. So just so you're aware of that. Does anyone else have questions or comments? Sir, again, please state your name.
Totally off the topic of what you're on. Tom Jackman, 7 Victoria Drive. I was curious, what horizons are you gonna tap to get the gas?
Marcellus. These are proposed to be Marcellus wells.
No,
No, just Marcellus wells at this time.
okay. Will the gas that you harvest be directly usable for pipeline gas, or will it have to be treated before it goes into the pipelines?
I believe that this is a dry gas area, so it would just be able to be put directly into the pipeline. I don't think that there'd be any dehydration that needs to be done.
That sounds right.
Do you plan to flare the wells whenever you
No,
first bring them online?
no. All the gas is captured. Flaring isn't something that's done except for as part of a safety procedure for when they're drilling. And that's they have a flare that captures, potential gas, or have a place where it's diverted. It's not something that's done as part of completions.
And how long do those flares typically last, Todd, do you know?
Oh, it's not a big flare. It's a device they call a flare that's got a little propane jet that sticks out, and every now and then it might puff, something like that.
But that's only during drilling, right?
Yeah.
This isn't like you see pictures from Texas and the Southwest
Right.
with
Yeah.
permanent large flares. Once you're in production, there's no flaring at all.
Correct.
I guess I'd be talking about the period right after the well is completed and you get a big surge of gas.
No, that's all collected and put in pipe.
Going back to the well pad, is that gonna be lined with a rubber liner, a plastic liner? And are there any ash products like fluidized bed and buster ash or anything that you're gonna be using in construction of that pad?
No.
They're all gonna be native limestone?
It'll all be limestone for the gravel. The containment will be placed on top of the gravel pad. So there's not a liner that goes underneath of the gravel. It's all lined above the gravel. That way, it's easier to inspect. You can tell whether there is a leak or not, or a problem that's going on. We don't rely on subterranean liners.
Is there any monitoring wells drilled on the site or adjacent to the site?
No.
Leah Finken, is there any
I think
notification?
he's still in the middle of.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any notification of any, to the residents of any water contamination or hazardous material waste?
If there's a release, in our emergency response plan, there is, it shows what the notification ranges are. I can't speak to those specifically. I haven't looked at those in a while, but we are required to provide those emergency response plans to the township and to emergency responders in the area prior to constructing the well site.
Not the residents.
They're available for public review. It's a big document.
You won't
No.
get notified.
Just say, no.
You indicated that you were gonna be going through some mine voids for the cold already by 9. Are they flooded or dry?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay, and how do you handle the casing?
So, how do you handle the casing on it? I'm not a drilling engineer. So basically, by the time we get to the coal, that'll be our third set of casing. So we have what's called the conductor, which is it's a 30-inch hole drill in the surface, and the casing is It's a 24-inch round casing. And that's only in this case, it's supposed to be about 40 feet deep. The second casing is a 24-inch hole with an 18 5/8 inch casing, and that goes to that's the one that's like 23 feet below the deepest freshwater, and then the third string would then go through the mine void. So, and that is a 12 3/8 inch hole with a 9 5/8 inch casing, 0.352 inches, so 3/8 of a inch thick steel casing, and that'll be run in this case approximately 2,900 feet deep.
And then, John, how many additional casings are there?
In this case, there's 5 casings total, so the coal would be the third, and then there's an intermediate and a production casing.
Just a standard steel casing?
Yeah, and I don't know the specifics on it. It's regulated by the state. We have requirements. We have to hit it in the regulations. Again, for the coal string, for example, it's about 3/8 of an inch thick. So yeah, but it's governed by the regulations of the state too.
And are there any requirements or plans to do it radon or methane monitoring in residential houses near the drill site?
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe that's a common practice. I believe I know we monitor for gas on site, but at a residence we typically don't. That would be new to me.
Life expectancy of the site?
From the time we start construction till we actually plug the wells, is that what you're looking for? Give or 50 years, give or take, because it depends on how much gas is in the ground, quite frankly, how well the gas comes out of the ground, just the natural decline curve, so on and so forth. We ballpark it at like 50 years, but Marcellus drilling started in 2007, so we're learning every day the decline curves for the Marcellus. And in this area too, we haven't drilled a lot of wells, obviously, so we're kind of learning those decline curves as we go.
So, John, by comparison, the active drilling and hydraulic fracturing stages, those are relatively short compared to the life of the well, right?
Correct. In this particular case, the first dev run, for example, from start to finish is around a year. So, and then we'll come back for a second dev run. It'll be about another year of active operations. But the rest of the time, the wells are just kind of sit there producing gas. It's pretty sublime, for lack of a better word. Not a lot going on at the well site. You have some well heads, you have some production equipment. For the most part, just not a lot of activities. There are well tenders coming in and out. Just check the status of the well, make sure everything's good. They're inspected regularly and so on. But yeah, the well site could be there for a while, you know, depending on the decline curve of the wells.
And the gas is gonna be produced at the site